There are fewer than 30 men in the world qualified to drive Formula One. A mere half dozen, perhaps, to win. At this moment, I'm inclined to think you're not one of them.
No, you want to. Keep up the good work, and there you have it. There you go. With the qualifying.
Welcome to F1Weekly.com. My name is Clark Rogers. I'm the host of the program. I'll be joined by Nasir Hamid, my co-host. This is podcast number 1065, October 16th, 2024. Nasir.
Thank you, sir. I say thieves in the temple and bribery at Marina Bay. Zach Brown on the podium and motor racing from Peachy, Georgia to Mount Panorama in Australia. We shall explain gladly. Back to you, mate.
Thank you, Nasir. On today's program, Nasir returns from Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. Toyota joining Haas means what? What does it mean? Red Bull upgrades, will they work? Or will they not work? That is the big Max question. And on today's program, this week's interview, Director of Porsche Racing, Urs Kuratle. Great interview. You will enjoy this. And please, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget that, yes, we do need your contributions to keep this program on the air. Just click on the Support F1 Weekly tab. You know you want to. Nas, welcome to the studio. How are you?
Well, I am back in town. I played the game of Get Out of Dodge on Hurricane Milton Bradley. But now I am back. We got the power and water in the hood. And Thursday morning, a big old jetliner is carrying me far away to Houston, and then more is on the road again to Round Rock, Texas, where I'm staying for the United States Grand Prix. Which means the long wait is over. Sunday we have a Grand Prix in Lone Star State. And Mr. Rogers, if I see Megan Thee Stallion, I will convey your deep and sincere feelings for her through her bodyguard. Or if I'm lucky, maybe I can ask Martin Brundle to convey your wishes to her. As they say, everything is big in Texas, so I am expecting the A-list of celebrities to go all the way down to ZZ Top. What is Le Host expecting from this year's Texas two-step? Will it be Lando and Oscar show? Will it be running of the bulls? Or will it be the eternal flame in every sense of the word? The spirit of Smedley saying to 18 drivers and Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso is faster than you. What say you?
Well, Nasir, ticket sales are up. That is the big question. Will Red Bull be able to respond? We've had a 4-week break, and all I've got to say is if there's no response, then it's going to be a pretty much done deal that Lando is going to catch up with Max. But if there is a response, then we get tit for tat, tat for tit. And sure enough, what we have here is competition. So it's going to be exciting. This is going to determine where we are at. And of course, Lando, a lot of weird things are coming out about his rituals and superstitions. We all have them deep down. So, no, I cannot wait for this Grand Prix. And of course, even though Ricciardo's been fired, he has to show up because he's so, as we say, red. So it's perfect. Everybody's having a lot of beef. Yowzer! Yeehaw! Thank you.
The inaugural race in Tejas. Well, that weekend I was at SCUSA Super National Karting event in Vegas, where I had the immense pleasure of meeting young teenagers with names like Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, and even Jack Doohan was there, Big Doohan's son, and he was so young I did not talk to him. So it was a very interesting thing, and one person I did talk to, and he went on to win that major event. That was Lance Stroll, believe it or not. But I think that weekend, Mr. Rogers, you were in Austin watching the inaugural US Grand Prix in Tejas. The run-up to the first corner is like the old Österreich ring. And I think COTA is one of the best tracks on the calendar right now. What was your impression of the layout of the track?
I love the track. I thought it was very, very cool. The layout of the circuit itself is very cool. I'm not a big fan of all the colorful runoff. That reminds me of Paul Ricard. And because my eyes just cannot handle all that. And I heard this year we are going to have artificial gravel. And I am not sure who makes artificial gravel, but is there a shortage of real gravel? Are we cutting into the real gravel industry? So I'm not sure what's going on there, Nasir. But no, this is a great track. Everybody loves it, even Le NASCAR.
LCH has been pretty successful in Texas, and 2 of his 7 championships were secured in Austin. On one such occasion, I was able to walk up to him and have a brief chat with him after the press conference in the media center. Most amusing part of the press conference was how focused and fast was Kimi Räikkönen in getting out of the room. Obviously, no surprise there. What are the chances of LCH winning in Texas in your ever humble opinion? I think he looks pretty cool and authentic with a Stetson and Smith & Wesson on the top step of the podium.
Yeah. Everybody wants to look cool in Texas. No, of course, Lewis Hamilton has dominated this track, but there are other opportunities ahead, folks. And it could be a big Lando win. Every British journalist will be cheering him on. So we'll see how much bias there is there. Max, will he swear or will he not? Those are the big questions, Nasir. It's going to be laughs. But no, great track. It's going to be fun. LCH, I don't know. Mercedes says they're bringing a really big upgrade. So who knows? LCH might just dominate the whole weekend, and Max and Lando could be somewhere in mid-pack. You could never tell. Thank you, Nasir.
Now, I have a question for you. Liam Lawson is replacing Daniel Ricciardo. Do you think he's going to surprise us like Franco Colapinto has been surprising us? Or will he not surprise us? The charm of the smiling assassin will, of course, be missed. But how do you think Liam Lawson will do, especially compared to his effervescent teammate, Mr. Yuki Tsunoda?
I think Liam Lawson is going to impress us, and he really has to impress us because he's always auditioning. That's how Red Bull is. Dr. Marco is watching. So, and Yuki, it's got to be a fun team to drive in, but still, no, I think he's going to impress. Everything's going to be fine. I think Ricciardo is a shell of what he used to be. And Liam is going to point that out as soon as he starts out qualifying Yuki at every Grand Prix, which he must do and has to do.
Now we come to Toyota tiptoeing through the tulips in the garden of Formula One. According to Godzilla of Japanese car manufacturing, the agreement does not mean they are entering Formula One. So I'm not sure if this is oh what a feeling or just one look moment. Time will tell. The agreement basically calls for that Toyota will provide their massive resources, technical expertise. They have a wind tunnel in Cologne, which has been used by other teams, including McLaren Formula One team. And they will also pay them a pretty penny, billions and billions of yens, and they will put some Japanese technical people to learn the game of Formula One. And so it will benefit both parties. I checked with this Japanese journalist, Zenta Otaki, who I met at the Miami Grand Prix. He is based in Tokyo, to see if he had some additional information from the Japanese media. And this is what he responded, and I quote, "There's a lot of the same misreporting going around that Toyota has made a full F1 return. They've fallen into the same trap as a lot of the overseas media regarding that detail," end quote. One thing for sure, they are not doing this to teach Gene Haas how to do origami or cook a hibachi steak. The team already has Ayo Komatsu for that. It is interesting they have done this technical collaboration with an American team. Needless to say, the US market is very huge for Toyota, and they have more than one manufacturing facility in this country. But Haas F1 powered by Ferrari in technical collaboration with Toyota. Interesting, to say the least. What do you see in the deal? Is Toyota trying to compete with Alpine?
I don't know if they're talking or thinking about anything, but it is bizarre because really the technical team behind Haas is Ferrari. They use a lot of Ferrari components, and I suspect that that's going to be stepped back a little bit and Toyota components are going to go in. I'm not quite sure, but Toyota does work with other manufacturing companies in Europe building cars. So like the Supra is mostly BMW. It's very interesting. But I'm not sure what's going on there. I was really shocked because I really honestly believe that they really lost face when they were in Formula One, and the amount of money that was lost and wasted, that I do not see them purchasing and coming back as a works team. It's just, right now, I mean, the internal combustion engine, I know Toyota is one of the companies that's trying to hang on to it more than anybody else, but still, I don't see it flourishing in the future, if you know what I mean.
Okay, sir, now we move on to a news item I saw on this website called F1i.com. And they report that a Singapore court has charged property billionaire and Singapore Grand Prix promoter Ong Beng Seng with obstructing justice and abetting offences committed by a disgraced ex-minister of the Singapore government. In the ongoing graft case, Ong is accused of giving high-value gifts to former Transport Minister S. Iswaran, who last week became the first former cabinet minister to be jailed in Singapore. I wonder how many lashes he's getting in a public square. Iswaran was sentenced to 12 months in prison for obstructing justice and improperly receiving gifts as a public servant, with Ong playing a central role in the prosecution's case. During the trial, the prosecutors revealed that Iswaran had accepted gifts worth more than $300,000, which included tickets to English Premier League and to F1 Grand Prix and luxury experiences such as private jet rides. All I can say is membership in high society has privileges. You don't even need an American Express card. Deutschmarks or dollars will do nicely. Thank you very much. Mr. Rogers, would you like to whip a lash on this one? And the other question I have, I know you have friends in high places. Have you ever flown in a private jet like a Cessna Globemaster or something like that?
Nasir, I admit it. I have never been in a private jet. I have been in a vintage piston-driven aircraft back in the day, which was exciting and thrilling. But no, you know what? Hey, the guy was trying to get a few perks. There's nothing wrong with that. And once again, if anybody wants to fly to Bordeaux with me, please lend me your private aircraft and we'll all go together. I have a lot of connections, ladies and gentlemen. Nasir?
Now we move on to Zach on the podium. Man from SoCal is on a high roll. At the recent Estoril Classic in Portugal, he made it to the podium in a 1981 Porsche 935. His co-driver was Le Mans legend Tom Christensen. But wait, we have a call waiting for McLaren. As we all know, there is no shortage of sponsors on McLaren cars. Now they have signed another major corporate sponsor, T-Mobile, a brand of Deutsche Telekom, and now a big player in the US market. Zach Brown's success in sponsorship hunting led Ron Dennis to bring him on board at McLaren. Now he's gone, and Mr. Brown has two lovely and fast cars and a fistful of dollars. I say more power and pesos to the hombre from L.A. Speaking of Portugal, I would like to give a shout out to one of the founding members of the F1Weekly Familia, Dr. Miguel. I hope he is doing well, and hopefully our paths will cross in 2025. And who can forget the only podium for a Portuguese driver in Formula One history? The incredible, unforgettable six-car United States Grand Prix in 2005. The jubilation of the third man on the podium, Tiago Monteiro, was amazing and unforgettable. The reason I bring this up, his bambino Noah Monteiro, will race in Spanish Formula 4 next season. And Mr. Robin Raikkonen is also moving up the ranks. So hopefully we'll have, pretty soon we'll have nothing but a grid full of drivers we've already seen in a previous decade or two. That'll be very interesting. And as always, cream will rise to the top. And we shall see what the flavor is. Oh, this was of much interest, the next news item. A word about Peter Windsor's favorite company, Brembo. They are buying Swedish suspension company Öhlins. Maybe the name is Öhlins as there is an umlaut on the O, but I'm not sure. They make suspension parts and are heavily involved in motorsports from Formula One and other series to MotoGP. Interestingly, at this time the company is owned by Michigan-based Tenneco, who also own Champion spark plugs and Moo mufflers, among many other brands. And I remember once upon a time, Champion spark plugs were like one of the major sponsors and advertisers in Motorsports magazine. We're talking 70s and 80s. Now we come to Crossing the Pond, a look at some American drivers who raced in Grand Prix Formula One racing. We shall start with Harry Schell. Paris-based driver, came from a very wealthy family, surprise, surprise, and was the first driver from the US to score championship point in a Grand Prix. And of course, this reportage does not include the drivers who took part and scored points in the Indy 500, which was part of Formula One championship from 1950 to 1960. Schell's best finish was second in the 1958 Dutch Grand Prix in a BRM. He lost his life in an accident at Silverstone in 1960. Next on the list we have Lance Reventlow. The American Lance was pretty much on the same program as his namesake from north of the border. His mother was Barbara Hutton. She was the granddaughter of the founder of Woolworth chain of stores, and the only heir to the family fortune, which at that time was like the biggest money anybody had in this country. But wait, there's more, since money is never enough. She was married to one of the E.F. Hutton brothers, and she was a smart lady. When the husband spoke, she listened. Like Dan Gurney, Lance built his Scarab F1 car in Southern California. His one and only Grand Prix start lasted one lap at Spa in 1960. The main problem was his front-engine car was obsolete on debut. Lance lost his life in a 1972 plane crash in the Rockies, and Miss Barbara Hutton was at one time married to Cary Grant also. Next, Phil Hill, first American and still the only US-born Formula One world champion, and of course that was in 1961 for Ferrari. He has the unique distinction of winning the very first motor race of his life and also winning the last of his career. And he also won Le Mans more than once with Ferrari, which is very interesting. And for years and years he was involved in a very famous, well-known car restoration business in his hometown, Santa Monica, CA. And his son also raced in Europe, but then he had a pretty big accident, I think, at the level of British Formula 3, and then dropped out. Now we come to Maston Gregory. Rich guys racing in Europe or America is nothing new. Maston Gregory came from a family that owned an insurance business, and his papito died when he was young, so he inherited a lot of money. He took part in 38 Grand Prix races. Best finish was second in the 1959 Portuguese Grand Prix at Monsanto Park, a place Dr. Miguel and I visited some years ago. Gregory won the 1965 Le Mans with Jochen Rindt. Their race-winning Ferrari used to be at the India Museum, but now the new regime has better ideas for that car, and they want to sell it and other cars that have nothing to do with the Indy 500, which is very, very sad because these are very important motorsports memories and machines. So I hope they stay in the US. And for those who are planning to go to the Indy 500 next year, as always, Memorial Day in May, apparently the museum, which has been shut down for renovation, and I'm sure Mr. Penske and his people will do a fantastic job when it's reopened. It's slated to open in April of next year. And if all goes well, I will be at the Indy 500 as one of my very old friends from my days in Northern California. He normally texts me when I'm watching the Indy 500. A couple of times his text came when I was at the track during the race, so it'll be nice to catch up with him. Next on the agenda, Carroll Shelby, man from Texas of AC Cobra fame, raced in 8 Grand Prix events, 4 with Maserati and 4 with Aston Martin. His best finish was 4th at Monza in 1958 with Maserati in a shared drive with Maston Gregory. Next, Mr. Richie Ginther, American one-hit wonder. His historical victory had triple effect on motor racing history. The 1965 Mexican Grand Prix was not only his first win, but also the first win for Honda as a constructor and first for Goodyear. Now we come to another gentleman from SoCal, Southern California, Dan Gurney. The ever-smiling All-American racer was born in Long Island but moved with his family to Southern California, and his father was an opera singer. Then his racing empire was called All-American Racers, AAR, which was based in Santa Ana, and he had started that company or business with Carroll Shelby. Gurney gave 3 Formula One teams their maiden wins, which is very interesting. Porsche, 1962 French Grand Prix at Rouen. This is their one and only victory as a constructor. Brabham, 1964 French Grand Prix, and of course his own Eagle victory at Spa in 1967. The same year, in fact it was within a few weeks of each event, he won the 67 Le Mans in a Ford GT with Mr. A.J. Foyt. Now we come to Peter Revson. His autobiography was called Speed with Style and went to press the same day he was killed in a testing accident at Kyalami in 1974. In the 73 season, he had 2 wins at Silverstone in the British Grand Prix and the very wet, rain-affected Canadian Grand Prix. Refson also took pole position at Indy. He was a college friend of Teddy Mayer, and his brother, Doug, younger brother, unfortunately was also killed in a race accident at a small track in northern part of Denmark. I think it was 1967 or 68, and Mr. Frank Williams was in that race as a driver. Now we come to another American who was very good and also unfortunately lost his life in a racing accident, and that was Mark Donohue, a name synonymous with Penske Racing. Mark was a mechanical engineering graduate from Brown University in Rhode Island. He was on the third step of the podium in his first Formula One race, the 1971 Canadian Grand Prix in a Penske-entered McLaren. In 72, he gave Roger his first Indy 500 victory, also won races for the captain in Can-Am and Trans Am, and sadly lost his life in Austria in 1975 during Sunday's warm-up session. And in those days, they used to have Sunday warm-up session for half an hour or 40 minutes before the actual Grand Prix. Now we come to a name familiar with most people, especially this day and age, Andretti, and this we're talking Mario Andretti. Grand Prix debut in 1968 from pole position in a Lotus at Watkins Glen, IndyCar champion, and of course last American to become Formula One champion and to win a Grand Prix going back all the way to 1978. Next, Eddie Cheever, man from Phoenix, Arizona. He was raised in Roma, and as he told in our interview with him, he was so upset that he drove from Roma to Maranello and insisted to Enzo Ferrari that he should release him from his contract just because they had signed Gilles Villeneuve. And at this time, which I remember very well, this deal, Eddie Cheever was like a teenager. And like he said, where she had a manager or somebody could some knock sense in his head while he was driving to Maranello. He drove for many teams in Formula One, including Renault, and won the Indy 500 in the beautiful IRL series. Next, we come to one of your favorites, Scott Speed, man from Manteca, Northern California. He was a karting sensation in the US before moving to Europe with Red Bull. He won the very competitive Formula Renault Euro Cup Series and was third in the inaugural season of GP2. We used to call it Rapidos, but did not get any wins. Playing Let's Get Physical with Franz Tost got him out of the Red Bull ring in Formula One arena, but he stayed with the team, or at least with Red Bull, for a few seasons and raced in NASCAR. And Red Bull's NASCAR effort was headed by none other than Mr. Gunther Steiner. Next we come to Alexander Rossi. This young man from Northern California entered history books as one of the few drivers who won the Indy 500 on debut. He is also in the historical footnotes of F1 Weekly as one of the first young drivers we ever interviewed. Rossi raced in GP3 and GP2 and was competitive, won a lot of races in both series, and had a brief spell in Formula One with Marussia Manor or whatever that team is called, or was called. Now we come to Logan Sargent. The boy from Boca Raton, Florida, had a very impressive karting and junior series career. But in almost 2 full seasons of Formula One, he was unable to outqualify his teammate, which was Albon, not Alonso, and that pretty much did the dishes for him. So, Mr. Rogers, any thoughts you may have on any of these racing drivers? All of these are very competitive, good drivers. Sometimes it just does not work out for some drivers. Any thoughts on any of them?
A list of great legends of motorsports, basically. Well, I'm not throwing Logan Sargent into the legends, but you know what I'm talking about. No, wonderful stuff. I love the history, Nasir. Keep up the good work.
I think now we should take a break with some Gatorade with the Narain Karthikeyan flavor, and that would be cucumber.
So why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be back after these brief messages.
Hi, I'm Hélio Castroneves, four-time Indy 500 champion, and you're listening to F1 Weekly.
Welcome back to F1Weekly.com. Clark Rogers here, your host. And now, as we spin the globe and go around the world with Motorsports Mondial and the king, the Swami himself, Nasir Hamid.
Okay, today in Motorsports Mondial, we have the WeatherTech IMSA series and some other stuff. The final race of the WeatherTech IMSA series was the Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta over the past weekend. Thanks to Fräulein Teresa Zahn of Porsche PR, I was able to get an audience with Mr. Urs Kuratle. He is a big cheese at Porsche, originally from Switzerland. He is the director of racing for the performance car maker from Stuttgart. I hope listeners enjoy this conversation with Mr. Kuratle, with many thanks for his time. Okay, folks, I'm here at Road Atlanta with Mr. Urs Kuratle, director of Porsche Racing. Sir, good to meet you. How are you today?
I'm good. It's a nice day, only qualifying today, but qualifying is today very important for us because with qualifying you also can score some points, and with these points it's one more step closer, and we are very close already to the championship.
This is a very nice track, Road Atlanta. What European track is closest to this one, in your opinion?
It's funny you ask, because that's a discussion we had actually yesterday driving off the track. I think with all the up and downs, I'm not sure you fully can compare, but Spa probably is one of these tracks. I really love this track because there's so much up and down and elevated corners and things like this. It's really, really nice characteristic track which suits perfectly in the landscape here. I think Spa probably would be the European track which fits the most.
That's quite a comparison. Okay, US is a major market for Porsche and they have a very loyal fan and customer base here. How important is it for Porsche to have a presence in American motorsports on a regular basis?
I think it's really important because, as you mentioned, the market is huge. It's a big market here for Porsche, and also the tradition Porsche in motorsport in the US is very big. I mean, we ever since motor racing in the US is happening more since the 50s. Actually, Porsche is always present here, and especially in the endurance races, IMSA Daytona. That's huge. That's huge for us here, and we have a big fan base. But it's also for the market. It's extremely important.
The success story of Porsche and Penske go back to the days of Mark Donohue. Can you tell us how this deal came about and duration of the partnership?
I mean, the duration of the partnership is equal to the duration of the homologation, which is at the end of 2029, and. How we came together. I mean, that's quite an obvious thing. I mean, if you want to partner, if you want to compete in both series, Porsche Motorsport needed to have a partner, and there's only one partner we could find, and that was an obvious thing. That is Penske, because Penske is one of the most, or if not the most successful race team in the world. They are able to hold an operation in Europe and in the US, so that was a logical thing. There are two giants coming together, and it works out really, really well. I mean, as you can see with the success we have now this year as well, and after a very short period of time, that was worthwhile doing.
You touched my next question about IMSA and WEC, Penske team running both of them. Where do you see the main differences between the two series?
I mean, it's a different characteristic in both series. I mean, we have in the WEC, we have big race with Le Mans. Here we have Daytona, we have Sebring. It's the environment is different. It's really, that's a question also we ask ourselves quite often. What's the difference and why? And it's a characteristic. It's both are nice. Both have their own character, if you want. They have their own traditions as well. But it's simply different. But it's not better or worse. It's different.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Le Mans is probably the only major motor race not won by Penske Racing. Has Roger said to you, win one for the captain?
I can assure you he did many times, and he's very specific on this one. And yes, Roger did, but also Porsche did. With 19 overall wins for Porsche, we had just lately, and was present there as well. We had the 3 wins with the 919, and obviously we wanna follow the 919 and do the 20th overall victory. But Roger is extremely keen to win this race.
Yes. Now, next question may be emotional for you. Porsche has a horse in its logo, so does another team based in Maranello, and they won the 100th anniversary Le Mans, which was the 75th anniversary of Porsche. How did this go down in Stuttgart?
Not well. This did not go down well in Stuttgart. And there were reasons. We did not well in the 75th anniversary or the 100th Le Mans race. We did not well. This one strength of Porsche is that there was a fact that we didn't do well. We came back home. We analyzed all the mistakes we did and we eliminated most of them. This year we only were a couple seconds on P4 behind the winner, but we were on many aspects we were much better than last year. However, we did not win the race either, and that's the only thing is if you go racing with Porsche, you have to win Le Mans. There's no P2, no P3. You have to win it. But we are close. And we're there next year, I'm sure.
Okay, great. When it comes to driver selection, can you tell us a little bit about the process? Who has the final say, Penske or Porsche?
Porsche.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And since you have some markets are very big like US, and I'm sure you sell a lot of cars in England and France also. Does nationality of a driver play any part in driver selection, or is it all performance based?
It is mainly performance based, and if you would have two guys performing exactly the same, then maybe a nationality thing is also coming in place. But in our case, it's a purely performance based selection. That's definitely true.
Okay, when it comes to high-profile 24-hour races at Le Mans and Daytona, the strategy is played out night and day. But before the race, is there a preference or a priority which car should win?
Sorry, which car should win?
Yeah, before the race, do you have a team wants certain driver to win?
No, I mean if it's no, especially not in Le Mans, because Le Mans is too early in the year to have one car going for a championship, and even though with the double points you score in Le Mans, etc. So that's not for the big races. It's not anyone can win. We have not a number one and not a number two car.
Okay. Among the drivers you've been in this business for a while. Among the drivers you have worked in all forms of motorsports. Who impressed you the most with their technical feedback and work ethic?
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of,
I'm sure if the question was about negativity, you won't answer, but I think positives, you can mention some names.
Yeah, there's also, I'm not calling him negative, but I had the chance, for example, Kimi Räikkönen was a guy who's such a huge natural talent that he did not care about any feedback or so. You couldn't get hardly any feedback out of him. But I'm not calling him negative on this one. He was just the way he was. But also had a chance in my early career to work with Michael Schumacher, who was really impressive for the technical feedback, but also from the ability to bring a team together. And so there's these guys. But I have to say, the drivers we are working now is they have to work as a team. They have to work. They have to adapt their feedback within their team, and the driver lineup we have here, and I'm not saying this because I should say this probably, but I really believe that the driver lineup we have in the IMSA but also in the WEC is in the championship or in the pit lane probably the best one, and these guys are really impressive how they bring their feedback together as a group, because in F1 or in any single-seater racing you have one guy who drives the show. Here we have three guys who have to cooperate with each other. That's impressive.
You mentioned Michael Schumacher. I'm guessing was the Mercedes Sauber days, and they had Heinz-Harald Frentzen also, and it was always reported at that time Heinz-Harald was faster, and I'm sure you know Mr. Jochen Nierpasch. I was talking to him last year, and I asked him about this, and he said Michael was focused, and Heinz-Harald had a lot of ideas. What was the difference you noticed between these two drivers?
Jochen, he mentioned it exactly the right thing, and at these days, these were you had to take care of for example, fuel consumption a lot. And Michael probably was the most complete one, having all those different factors in his mind. But Frentzen was really, really fast, and he had a lot of ideas. Not to forget Karl Wendlinger. He was just the most quiet one out of the three guys in that junior program at the time, and he was really fast as well. But then after this, they were young kids. They were like myself as well at the time, but like 20, 21 year old, but they developed after this a lot, and Michael obviously went to the superstar. Franson did another path of the career, but he was always a highly talented guy all the time.
If you don't mind, can I ask you two more questions, please? Okay, thank you. Nico?
These are the good old days here.
Yeah, two more questions.
Two more questions. Yeah.
Okay. So, Nico Hülkenberg won Le Mans with Porsche first time out. There were rumors another German was interested in racing at Le Mans with your team. Is Porsche interested in having Sebastian Vettel at Le Mans?
I think for Porsche it would be great to have somebody like Sebastian in our car, but all the environments have to fit together. And there were talks, there were tests. We reported about these as well, but it's not an immediate plan for next year. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. You are from Switzerland, famous for Joe Siffert, Clara Gazzoni, and Peter Sauber. How and when did you get the racing fever?
Oh, that was as a kid, and then I called Peter Sauber when I was like 19 years old, and if he needs somebody to help to work, he declined at first, but then we still get together, and I spent almost 25 years with him in the company, so I know Peter very well, and I went through sports car, then the Formula One thing. Now with Porsche, I'm back with sports car, which I believe is one of the coolest series you really can be in, and Joe Siffert unfortunately never met. Clara Gazzoni had a chance, but then he unfortunately died as well in a car accident. And there's some, and not only those, there are more really famous, especially at endurance drivers from Switzerland, and that's a nice history Switzerland has. But I spent a lot of time with Peter Sauber and his team, almost 25 years, 24 and a half years to be precise, and in total, and that was a nice time. He's a nice guy.
Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Urs, thanks for joining F1Weekly.com. Back to you, Nas.
Moving on, the Road Atlanta is a very good old-school racetrack, not designed by computers. I was staying about an hour from the track. The track is located in the town of Brazelton, Georgia, of course, and the whole area of the town was once bought by a local yokel by the name of Miss Kim Basinger. Then she went BK. No, we're not talking Burger King, but bankrupt. The first person I met on this trip was a gentleman who invited me to Oreca operation in Le Castellet, where Paul Ricard Circuit is, earlier this year, Monsieur Patrick Bernard. He told me Oreca will be building the WEC IMSA car for Hyundai. They already have sent some Korean engineers over to Oreca to go over the design concepts, and like he said, like all of the manufacturers, Hyundai wants some resemblance to their production cars. He told me Hyundai will build their own engine, so there will be no Hyundai powered by Honda, which led me to ask him about Alpine powered by Mercedes in Formula One. And he said the whole situation makes no sense to him, as the Alpine name has relevance only in France and not even in other European countries. So we'll see how long Renault will hang on to Alpine Formula One team before they sell out to Michael Andretti or his new boss, Dan Torres, or some other millionaire, billionaire from China or Korea, Hong Kong, Bahrain. Time will tell. Now, this race over the weekend was the finale of the 2024 WeatherTech IMSA Championship. Mr. Jack Aitken put his caddy on pole. And speaking of Korea, his mother is from Korea, I believe, and father is English. It was also the final race for Chip Ganassi team and their partner Cadillac. They said goodbye on a winning note. The winning drivers were Scott Dixon, Sebastian Bourdais, and Dutchman Renger van der Zande, who made the winning pass with about 15 minutes left in the 10-hour race. So pretty impressive. Penske Porsches was second and third. The crew of the third-place car, Felipe Nasir, Dane Cameron, and Matt Campbell, took the Drivers' Championship, while Penske Porsche won the team's championship. The first race, that would be Petit Le Mans, was held in 1998. This led to the creation of American Le Mans Series, which later merged with NASCAR's Grand Am Series, to what we have today, a thriving IMSA GTP series. The IMSA GTP was very popular in the late 80s and 90s with factory teams from Corvette, Ford, Porsche, Jaguar, Nissan, and Nissan were dominant with Jeff Brabham with cars built in El Segundo, California. And then there was Toyota GTP program run by Dan Gurney's All-American Races out of Santa Ana, California, and their championship-winning driver was Juan Manuel Fangio II, nephew of five-time world champion. And I met him many times, a very cool and decent guy. And if you remember, you and I met him some years ago when he showed up at the Monterey Historics. Next year, another manufacturer is entering IMSA competition and looks like they are on the Alpine program. Cupra, a division of Spanish automaker Seat. And Cupra Cup is very popular in certain parts of Europe. And Seat, which used to be a subsidiary of Fiat, is now a division of VW, Volkswagen Group. Italian Dindo Capello is the most successful driver at Petit Le Mans with 5 wins. And I must mention that Petit Le Mans and the American Le Mans series was the brainchild of multi-billionaire Senor Don Panos, who was very passionate about wineries and motor racing, and he was very good for American motorsports. Now we move on to the Great Race. Like the Daytona 500 is known as the Great American Race, the Bathurst 1000 on Mount Panorama Circuit is the Great Race in Australia. Very pleased to say members of F1 Weekly Familia members for hanging out together. Dave and Katrina from the left coast of Australia and the original JB from the right coast. Race winners were Brody Kostecki and Todd Hazelwood. In 21st position was James Courtney. He had a massive accident back in the day at Monza while testing a Jaguar F1 car. Very lucky to be alive because it was a serious high-speed shunt. He was in the same league talent-wise as Oscar Piastri. Around the time he moved from Australia to Europe, as a teenager, I had a racing contact in Sydney who wrote to me I should keep an eye on this kid, saying he's our Senna. He was really that good. In ninth was another driver from that part of the world who was also F1 bound till he had a very big accident. Richie Stanaway from New Zealand. Alexander Rossi called him the best driver he raced against. And I don't think that's any exaggeration. The Bathurst 1000 is 1,000 kilometers, which is just over 600 miles. The race started out as Armstrong 500 in 1960 on the Phillip Island circuit, which is now famous for hosting the MotoGP race, and moved to Mount Panorama circuit in 1963, and the winners there, first time in Mount Panorama, were Harry Firth and Bob Jane in a Ford Cortina. And Bob Jane later started a Bob Jane, I think it was called Tire Mart, accessory shop, which was pretty big at one time. King of the Mountain in Land Down Under was Peter Brock, who won this race 9 times. And this guy was very, very popular there. And I don't know if you remember, back in the day, Mobil Oil used to feature him in tele ads here in the United States. Some years ago, this race was shown live on Speed TV, and they had even sent Darrell Waltrip to cover the event, which was very well received. And Mr. JB gave me a few laps in March of this year. It was a totally fair dinkum and absolutely authentic experience as we encountered a kangaroo on the track. What more can you ask for when you go to Australia? Now we come to Murder on the Orient Express. The slings and arrows continue after the loving and killing. Chinese motorcycle manufacturer QJ Motor has called for the Gresini team, its sponsors in the Moto 2 class, to immediately sack Motegi race winner Manuel Gonzalez after he wore a traditional Japanese hachimaki headband. And I'm sure you know what that is. The hachimaki, a traditional Japanese item of clothing, dates back to the samurai era, was extensively adopted by the Japanese military during World War II, most notably by kamikaze pilots while flying suicide missions. Some of our listeners will recall the Nissan GTP team members were wearing the same hachimaki on the pit wall back in the days when Jeff Brabham was winning races after races and championship after championship. All this is in the past. My message to QJ Motor is have some ice-cold Diet Pepsi on the rocks and chillax. The sweet taste may help in letting go of past bitterness. Mr. Rogers, what is your French feng shui on this misfortune cookie?
Well, it's pretty funny stuff how sensitive we can be post WW2. But, I think it's hilarious. I mean, it's not like it's a swastika representing evil. So I say let him wear it. My problem was Mr. Gonzalez, really? Come on. So I can't wait for Texas. It's going to be fun. Eating beef all day, Nasir.
Okay, folks, finally we come to Musical Mondial. Today we have this beautiful song which comes from a French movie by the name of Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And speaking of Cherbourg, Monsieur Rogers, have you ever been there?
I have been to Cherbourg. I took a wrong turn and wound up in Cherbourg when I was supposed to be going in the opposite direction. It's fun, and it was a lot of laughs. That was 1994 for the 50th anniversary of the big one.
This version is sung by Andy Williams, so I hope our listeners enjoy this. Thank you very much for listening, and we shall meet again next week behind Palatial Studios walls. Bye-bye.